Reddit, what's your bad United Airlines experience? A few years ago I was flying to Denver, probably from New York, for Christmas. There was an impending storm in Denver, so no one was sure if the flight was going to happen or not. All the flights after ours had already been cancelled, but they decided ours would beat the storm, so they let us take off. We got to about an hour in and they closed the Denver airport, so they landed the plane in Chicago and basically just let everyone fend for themselves. Whatever, I just skipped the gigantic line at customer service and went to the counter for the next flight back to New York. That was fine. They got me on and I went home. The issue came when I wanted a refund. Here was their line: "We'll give you back 50% of the ticket price because we got you halfway there." I'm not kidding. It took weeks of fighting for them to finally issue a refund. This is why chargebacks are awesome. My dad had a United flight booked to visit me across the country and he had to cancel because his father was deathly ill in the hospital. They refused to refund his ticket. 5 minutes on the phone with Amex got him his money back. It was my last flight of a 3-flight trip home. My seat number said no on it for my final flight from Philly to RI. Should have been my indicator. "Get to the gate early, you cannot board this flight, you are not checked in, mom." I checked into this flight in Oklahoma yesterday and printed all of my boarding passes at 5 AM this morning. This is not possible. How am I not checked in? Literally couldn't say anything other than "you're not checked in, I cannot find your reservation" over and over. Ask for a manager. No manager. Tells us to go to customer service. Go to customer service. See the 3 most useless slugs of babbling humans there. When we explain what happened, they just tell us we need to resolve it at the gate. They can't do anything. I could be a lot more rude and upset about this situation, but I try to hold back. They get off at angry people in the airport. I get back to gate. They've now given mine and my work partner's seats to someone on standby. Why? I have my stuff right here. These work tickets were booked months out. This wasn't a last minute thing. Plane starts backing away from terminal. Manager finally arrives. Hits all of 4 buttons. "Here, they are right here." That's all it took. Plane already left. Offered me a 200 flight voucher good for 1 year. At that point it took everything for me to not punch someone. Rented a car and angrily drove from Philly to RI. Picked up my luggage in the Pelican case my camera gear was in was broken with damaged camera gear. Nothing was refunded or replaced. Frick them and frick overbooking flights. Once when I was 7 years old, I flew United as an unaccompanied minor. They bumped me off the flight without calling my family members and I was just sitting terrified at the gate for 5 hours with nobody talking to me or telling me what was going on. This was before cell phones were a real thing. My mom got to the airport at my destination and panicked when I didn't get off the plane. They tried to say I never even had a ticket. It took them a few more hours to actually call United at my departure airport, and that was with my mom escalating everything, sobbing, generally freaking out. They put me on the next plane, which was another few hours. My parents got free domestic flights for a year, but United never once apologized. Not once. Denied boarding to our 3-year-old. We then of course had to volunteer our seats. We think they did this so they would only have to pay 1 penalty instead of 3. I have only flew United a couple of times and didn't really have any issues. The only time they tried screwing me was when I had a first class ticket and tried telling me they overbooked and I had to go to coach. But instead of refunding any money, they thought I would just accept an airline credit that can only be used on another flight. Not happening. I paid my own money for it. I want it back. I ended up chewing multiple people out and dang near got arrested. Eventually they refunded my whole ticket and I took a different airline home. That was my last time flying with them. After many delays for the most random things, we didn't put enough gas in the plane. We accidentally powered the plane on wrong. We sat on the runway too long and missed our appointment for takeoff, etc. It took 26 hours for me and my so to fly from Kentucky to California. By contrast, a direct flight should have been 4-5 hours. We had 3 layovers, 4 planes, and every delay in the book, which caused us to miss subsequent connections and have to be rescheduled. Plus babies screaming on the overnight flights. United did not even so much as give us a meal ticket to compensate. I have literally flown to the Philippines faster, including layovers. Being told at the gate that I have to check my roll-on bag because the overhead bins are full. Then getting on board and finding they are about 1/3 empty. I was flying last minute from California to see my grandfather in Florida as his health was rapidly declining and my parents wanted me and my siblings to all see him one final time before he passed away. My dad and brothers flew out on United a few days before to meet other family members, but I had a test in school and had to fly out later than them as an unaccompanied minor. I was 13 at the time and had to transfer in Chicago, which is a nightmarish airport to connect at, so my mom arranged for United to have a staff member take me off the first plane and to the gate to catch my connecting flight, which is a service they offer for some sort of fee. I get to the airport and I'm checking in when they say that because my flight is the last one of the day, the connection accompaniment service isn't offered, even though we had confirmed booking it on the phone the day before. Even when we asked if I could just make the connection alone, they said that not only could they not arrange an accompaniment, but because I was a minor they wouldn't let me on the flight even though my seat was already booked, because they didn't think I could make the connection on my own and didn't want to have me cause trouble by getting lost in the connecting airport and potentially delaying the connecting flight. Even worse, they wouldn't let me take a flight the next day, or the day after if I remember correctly, or move my ticket to another airline, saying we'd have to buy an entirely new ticket and pursue a refund on the first ticket at a later time. We went home from the airport after several hours of trying to get me on any flight going to Florida at all, but couldn't find a single ticket because it was so last minute. I never got to see my grandfather. We did finally get a refund, just in time to spend that money on my ticket out for his funeral, but never flying United again, and I encourage everyone I know not to fly with them either. Summer of 2016, my oldest daughter was flying from Newark to Detroit as an unaccompanied minor to go visit her grandparents like she does every summer. This was her first time doing it alone with United and it was heck. I had to drive 3 hours to the airport as they told me minors can't fly alone unless it's a non-stop. Get to the airport and find out the unaccompanied minor fee was never charged, even though I said I wanted to pay for everything when I bought the tickets 3 months before her flight. So it was a lovely surprise being told I had to pay $150. I get to security and they start giving me issues because I have my 10-month-old strapped to me in a carrier. I was told I wouldn't be allowed to walk her back to the gate unless I left my youngest with someone. Granted, that was the security and not UA directly saying that, it just added to the frustration. I finally am allowed to walk her to the gate, just to get told the flight was delayed 2 hours. More frustration from that, but it isn't the end of the world. Everyone has boarded and now they all let my daughter get on. I make the decision to wait around and watch the plane take off, and I'm glad I did. They're handling the people on standby and all of a sudden my daughter is being walked off the plane in tears. The lady tells me they need to take care of everyone on standby, and since she's a single flyer they're having her give her seat up. All the frustration finally got to and I started yelling. There were plenty of adults who were flying solo. You don't kick a dang 9-year-old child off the plane. When people who were on standby learned it was a child being forced to give up her seat, they told the lady they'll wait, and the lady at the desk was telling them they had the right to take her seat. My daughter was finally allowed back on the plane, but only after everyone on standby was persistent about making sure she got to fly. Not once did they ever apologize about the situation, even after calling, writing in letters and sending emails. I'm now more than willing to pay an extra $100 to fly with a different airline. Wow, at least the people on standby were nice about it. I live in Houston, which was the main hub for Continental. United merged with Continental, which was a great airline with very high customer sat ratings, and destroyed it. Frick you, United. Overbooked flight on my dad and I's trip from FLL to Greenville, Spartanburg. We elected to take the next flight and they sent out bags on the first flight. Turns out the next flight was overbooked, but a flight in Miami had guaranteed open seats and would be leaving in 4 hours. So we drove from FT Lauderdale to Miami, went through security again and made the flight. When we arrived in Greenville, they had lost our freaking bags. So we had to pay for our own hotel. We had planned on driving from Greenville to visit family in bumfrick nowhere, North Carolina. They refused to accommodate us in any way. We revisit the airport again and they still don't have our bags. However, they're able to track them, and for whatever reason, they were in fricking Atlanta. We elected to just buy new clothes and decided we'd pick our bags up on our way down from NC after visiting family. 4 days pass. We've left North Carolina and have driven all the way down to goddamn Atlanta. We get to the airport and go to baggage claim. At first they tell us our bags aren't there. My dad wasn't having it. He chewed out the attendant until the sorry guy went to the back himself to look for the bags. I almost felt bad for him. My father's a retired Navy commander and this poor man was getting on his bad side. The man returned with our bags. We thanked him and we drove back down to South FL. TL. DR. United overbooked us. Made us change flights twice. Lost out bags for 2 days and made us cross 2 states to grab them. Sorry for any formatting or spelling errors. I'm on mobile. The worst part of this story was y'all having to go to the Atlanta airport. I hate that place. They spent so long on pre-boarding that there was only about 5 minutes left for 90% of the people to board. Then the flight attendants yelled at us to hurry up or the flight would be late like it was our fault. I hate that pre-boarding crap, but people really do take too long with all their bags trying to get on. 4 days. 4 days to get home from Texas to Ireland. First thunderstorms flooded the airport. Not their fault. On the second day I went in 5 hours early, figuring if anything happened I was at least there early to catch it. Nope. Flight crew didn't show, so that flight got bumped 3 hours after it was supposed to take off. Queue jumpers just got dealt with. So by the time I got to the front of the queue an hour later all the Dublin flights were gone, so I asked tearfully for Shannon. No sympathy, no care, just here's your route to go to Dallas now. Spent overnight in Dallas utterly terrified out my wits. I don't travel solo well, so bad that by the time I got my flight to Newark I had a lady come ask me if she could pray for me. 12-hour layover in Newark. Finally got home Monday lunchtime. I was supposed to arrive Saturday morning. Sod that airline. I swore I'd never fly with them again. Last Friday I had a flight scheduled to leave from Newark and land in Cincinnati. I was going to a bachelor's party for my cousin. I get a message from United 4 hours before my flight, stating that my flight had been cancelled and rebooked for late afternoon the following day. Basically, I was going to miss most of the bachelor party. Their explanation? Air traffic issues. No other flights from other airlines had been cancelled. I was able to get a full refund, but dang if I wasn't mad as heck. I was flying with my 5-month-old. My first flight was cancelled due to some mechanical reasons, so they put me on a flight with a layover in Chicago. I get to Chicago at 9 at night only to find out they didn't have room on the connection down to Florida and they told me I could catch the next flight in the morning. In my stupidity, while trying to pack everything and make sure I had what I needed for the baby, my credit card ended up in my checked bags. I had maybe $40 on my debit card and no one to call. When I got off the flight a stranger pulled me aside and let me know he had purchased a hotel room for me and my son for the night. I like your story because even a stranger or other passenger has the decency to want to help. At this point somebody could say on here that United Airlines murdered their whole family and I would be inclined to believe them. Well, TBH, I wasn't going to say anything, but one time I booked a flight on United and they murdered my whole family. Wouldn't even give me a voucher to go to their funerals. Never booked with them again. Flight originally scheduled for 6:45 p.m. from Houston International Airport. Travel around this time is already difficult due to rush hour and the airport's distance from the city center, not to mention planning on how to get dinner. Text alert at 2 p.m. Flight delayed half an hour to 7:15 p.m. Text alert at 3 p.m. Flight delayed further to 8 p.m. Text alert at 3:30 p.m. Flight delayed further to 8:15 p.m. No text updates for several hours, so we get errands done and start making dinner plans. Text alert at 6 p.m. Flight time moved back to original time of 6:45 p.m. We're hanging out in a part of Houston probably half an hour away from the airport. Jump in our car and speed to the airport as fast as we can. Call customer support and ask if there's any way they can hold the flight for us. Due to their scheduling errors, Customer support claims that they never delayed the flight in the first place and that there's nothing they can do. By a miracle. Arrive at the airport at 6:20 p.m. Explain issue to security and rush through as fast as we can. Text alert at 6:30 p.m. Gate changed to a gate on the other side of the terminal. Houston has freaking huge terminals. Text alert at 6:35 p.m. Gate change back to the original gate. Stop sprinting one direction and turn around. Arrive at the gate at 6:45 p.m. Announcement. Flight delayed to 7:30 p.m. Stare at United employees incredulously. Jesus, this just sounds like some United employee trying to frick with you for shoots and giggles. They cancelled our flight with no notice other than a recorded message that was left on voicemail at 5 a.m. the morning of the flight. We were supposed to be at the airport at 7 a.m. Since the message was a recorded message, it started playing when my voicemail answered, and the only part that was recorded was the end and didn't leave any information. I wasn't even sure who called. Got to the airport with boarding passes and everyone we talked to from United told us there was no flight. Showed no care. Didn't even bother to look at the passes. Finally had to push and get someone to look us up to be told our flight was the next day. Came back the next day to find out that our seats, this was our honeymoon. We had gotten married the day before the original flight, were separated on all flights. Original flight was one short connection. New flights had 3 to 4 hours layovers. New seats are not only separated but overbooked. I had to wait till everyone was seated to see if there was any place for me to sit. Explained to the flight attendants that we had just gotten married and would like to sit together. I was told to ask the other passengers if they were willing to switch. Some passengers were nice and switched, some just said no. I can't blame them. On the return flights I decided to call about the flight the day before. We were staying in the mountains, so not great signal. The person who answered simply said something like, yeah, the flight is still there. It hasn't been cancelled, you're good. My fault for accepting that answer. Get to the airport, return the rental car, stand in line to give our luggage only to find out our flight left 30 minutes ago, which is about 2 hours earlier than what our ticket said. We were placed on another flight that didn't leave for about 5 hours. Went back to the desk to complain and overheard when the attendant at the desk explained to the manager about our situation and heard the manager tell her we're probably lying. I walked away and sat and stewed for a little bit, then went back to talk to the manager. She never came out to see us, just had the attendant give us $2.05 vouchers to use at the airport. I regret not demanding to speak with a manager. At the time 911 was only a few years ago and we were young, brown and not confident enough to make a fuss in the airport. All return flights were also seated separately with long layover and one overbooked. I will never fly with United Airways. Will never recommend them and still actively try to get PPL to reconsider using them. I'm literally sweating reading these. I get married on the 29th and our flight to San Diego for the honeymoon is United and the day after our wedding. This seems minor but is really evil if you think about it. Some United planes have DirecTV screens at autoplay for the first 5 minutes of a flight, then demand $8 if you want to keep watching. Didn't pay? It scrolls through the guide telling you what you're missing. Too young to read the guide? It plays preview videos of children's movies as well. Just told your kid you don't have headphones anyways? The stewardess walks around offering free headphones. It just makes everyone angry. I was on a plane that did that once. One of the shows on was an episode of Supernatural about a demon that makes planes crash. Round trip St. Louis to Chicago. That's an hour non-stop flight. How bad can they frick it up? Very bad. This was 3 years ago. BTW. Flight was delayed leaving because, first, the crew wasn't there. We wait. Then, they have to do the cleaning flight check inspection. We wait. Then, there is a maintenance issue. We wait. Some left to get on a different flight, but my luggage was on that flight, so I waited. It was about 4-5 hours late. The flight home I got to the airport 3 or 4 hours early because I got on the shuttle with the rest of my co-workers and thought I'd just waited out there. So I sat in Concourse C watching chaos erupt around me. People who had been bumped 2 and 3 times continuing to get shuffled around. Sudden announcements for gate changes that sounded something like this over the loudspeaker. MPHMMPPMPHHTHTHTHMMPPH FUMPFIT MEMFUM MUMMUM FUMUM. People were missing their flights because of it. I sat watching the prompter to see if my gate got changed. I even asked an attendant who was real snotty about why I was so dumb I couldn't read the prompter. They did change the flight to the gate next to me. It didn't show on the prompter. I heard other travelers say it. All around me people were saying, "I'll never fly United again." I said too. I was another 4-5 hours late getting home. I could have driven for all the time I wasted in the airport. My boycott continues. ETA. My brand new bright pink suitcase. Bright so I could pick it out from the mass of black navy suitcases in baggage claim. Showed up in Chicago with a huge slice down the front like someone took a box knife to it. Of course, normal wear and tear and United wouldn't do a thing about it. Sir, my bag just got ripped in half. It happens all the time, judging by all of the damaged baggage stories. I was returning home to Sydney after school ended in New York, and so after leaving Newark, transferring at Atlanta and finally arriving at SFO. Delays on their end meant I had missed my transfer at the airport and I had to wait an entire day for the next plane. They didn't offer any compensation or hotel rooms and just gave me a blanket, telling me to find somewhere to sleep and hang for the next 20 or so hours. To make things worse, this was on the 23rd of December, so I ended up leaving the night of the 24th and essentially skipped Christmas as I landed on the 26th in Sydney. I spent over 50 hours traveling and I was not happy by the end. I transferred from an international Korean Air flight to an UA1. It was like going from a perfect sunny day to the aftermath of a nuclear apocalypse. So horrible. Go on. Transatlantic flight home last year, US UK. Sitting in the back row of the plane, just fallen asleep and was awakened by the smoke alarm going off and the smell of burning. The panic from passengers spread down the plane, but no one from the cabin crew said a word to us or explain. In hindsight they probably burned food and they knew everything was fine, but frick me we didn't. From UN, in the plane is the best time to freak you out about a fire. They gave tickets to 2 people on standby, which were the same seats as a couple that had already checked in. The couple had to take a later flight since the standby passengers had already boarded. It was the day before Thanksgiving. They alerted the passengers in the boarding area next to me that their flight would be delayed until that evening. I saw people leave, presumably to use the restroom, grab some food, etc. About 20 minutes later, they started boarding at that gate, so I assumed it was another flight. Nope, same flight. No announcement or anything. They just boarded and took off. It was one of those tiny planes flying to a podunk town, so I assumed there wasn't another flight until at least the next day. I watched this girl come back to the gate and saw the employee essentially tell her, "Oops, yeah, they left already." Then I put 2 and 2 together. The girl, who looked like she was in college, sat down and started bawling. It was Christmas Eve. Was boarding zone 5. When called they cut the line off and said that they couldn't let us board. They had a weight limit when taking off from SNA, steep takeoff, so they couldn't let us on. Perhaps that's something you plan for before booking, people. It was a 7 AM flight with a lot of angry passengers who couldn't board. On top of that, they had to coax people off. They had boarded a few too many in boarding zone 4. Had to be taxied to LAX in the middle of morning traffic and do the whole security and check-in process again. Oh god, I had that happen once at SNA, but it was with Southwest, who is super cool. They allowed us to wait for the flight to Vegas instead of to Sacramento and gave $25 in airport meal vouchers. Oh boy, story time. I was on a 8 AM flight from NYC to Milwaukee, MKE, with a layover in Chicago. The ETA for MKE was 2:03 PM. Delays upon delays in NYC, and it was a bit weird because the plane was really empty. Well, whatever. We finally fly out, landing in Chicago at 2 PM. Naturally, the connecting flight was missed, so I need to catch the next one. The agents assure me that the next one, at 5 PM, will be all set. I'm already somewhat pee at this point because I'm impatient and was supposed to be in MKE for a conference that started at 4/5. But no worries, crap happens. So I decide to go to the airport bar and proceed to order the largest beer they have because I know it's going to be a couple of hours until the next flight. Not 30 seconds later, I get a text that my 5 PM flight was cancelled due to inclement weather. There's not a freaking cloud in sight. This is when it gets interesting. Next flight is at 11 PM and they're saying there's no guarantees that I'll have a seat, so I'll probably need to catch the next morning's flight. I have business meetings all day the next morning, so I really need to get to Milwaukee ASAP. I start looking at other options. There's a $50 bus that I figured was my best bet. But wait, what about luggage? So apparently, United has all the luggage in this big room in the Chicago airport, and a staff person said that they can't give me access to my bag, so I'll have to wait until it's flown to Milwaukee. Only God knows when. I tell them I have medication in the bag that I need. They still refuse. I ask to see a manager, and I swear to God, they send out an 18-year-old to talk to me, so they won't give me my bag. Can't find a spot on any other plane and won't pay for another airlines flight. Won't pay for the bus. Won't pay for a hotel stay in Chicago overnight. I ended up paying the $50 for the bus. Had to take a taxi to the Milwaukee airport next morning to get my bag from claims, and vowed never to fly United ever again. I am almost positive that it is illegal to withhold medication from someone. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.